Adjusting a hood can be frustrating, so today we're going to take a look at a few things that can help make that job easier. Before aligning your hood, you'll want to make sure your fender gaps and this gap is right on both sides. Let me show you the other side. And here's a quick shot of the other side. So you'll want to make sure your fender door gaps are right before you start with the hood. The first step is to install the hood using any old marks on the hinge, the hood, or even the fender. The next, and probably the most important step, is to make sure that your hood lines up nicely with the cowl. And to get that spacing right, you can loosen the bolts up on the hinge and slide it out this way or back this way. Here's a close-up shot of those bolts. You'll loosen this one and slide the hood either forward or backwards. These are just slots, so it doesn't really allow you to move the hood sideways, like that way or this way. Sometimes you can bend the hinges, if you really need to, by pushing the hood over that way or back this way. Sometimes you'll close the hood and it'll be too high in this corner. To move the back corners of the hood up or down, you'll loosen this nut and this one behind the spring. Again, it's super important to first make sure that this gap is right, because this doesn't change, this doesn't move. This has to be perfect before you worry about anything else. Once you have the hood to the cowl gap right, you can then worry about the fender to the hood gaps. If the gap up here is too tight and you want to pull this fender out a bit, you can loosen this one, and this one, and leave this one tight. It'll pivot on that one. Then pull your fender out a bit and tighten this one up. Then tighten these up. If the gap is too wide up front and you need to move the fender that way, you loosen this one, and this one, leaving this one tight to pivot on. Push the fender in and tighten the bolt. Sometimes you don't have enough adjustment, so you can open those holes a little bit to get your gap just right. After you have your hood to fender gaps just right, the next step is to adjust the height of the hood in relation to the fender. And this needs to be nice and level. To do that, there's a little bumper right here that can be adjusted. There's a Phillips screw on top and a lock nut on the bottom. You'll loosen the lock nut and then turn this one way or the other to adjust that height, then lock it back down. A lot of times it works best if you just remove the latch while adjusting your hood gaps. This can throw you off a bit. It can latch in here and move the hood one way or the other. When you do get the hood where you want it and all the gaps look good, you can adjust this latch with these 3 bolts or 4 so that the hood sets in there real nicely and doesn't move one way or the other. Finally, once it clicks into place, you want the corners just touching the rubber bumpers. Again, you'll want this latch adjusted just enough to pull the hood down against these bumpers. For an old car, I think our gaps look pretty good, and the hood opens and closes real nicely. Here's a quick shot of the other side. And finally, a shot of the hood to cowl gap on the right side. If you have any other tips that can help folks, feel free to comment, as this job can be pretty frustrating. I hope you enjoyed this video on making hood adjustments. If you did, and you'd like to get my latest videos, don't forget to hit the subscribe button.